company is really focused on surviving because obviously the company is in Ukraine, and getting things in and out is difficult. And most of the people left. Either they got drafted or they took the family out of Ukraine. So they continue to innovate, but it's hard to say what the future is a little.
Well, what's happening?
Yeah, what's happening there? If you want to go there.
Well, it's up to you, I guess.
No.
Bring it. Why not?
Well, I guess what's the biggest question? What's happening is the war is happening. Last night, it was 150 missiles and drones that hit Ukraine.
Yeah.
That was overnight.
Jesus, man.
I saw that.
They went mostly after the electrical grid. They hit another dam on the Dnieper River. Thankfully, it stands, so no flood. But it was another very difficult night. And this is just something that they have to deal with. People at the factory, they continue to make the stuff, and they gotta.
So
the factory still works. It still works.
It's at lower capacity. They moved some stuff to Poland, but you can move the. Anatoly about 5 or 6 years ago finished a purpose-built building next to Kiev, just north of Kiev. He had 300 employees before the war there. Now there's probably maybe 100.
For building.
Like he built a purpose-built building as a factory to make the stuff.
Wow.
Like
CNC.
and
I can send the picture.
Yeah, that's
they have
incredible.
very
All your stuff
factory.
gets shipped over
Big
then,
factory.
obviously.
Yeah,
That's
like
what
we
happens.
do small modifications here, repairs,
Sure.
adaptations. We build the vehicle here, but the main tech still comes from Ukraine.
Okay.
But we started the company as a field test company as well, because we got the experience. We just doing some feedback to the factory. I'm talking with engineers all the time, this is good, this is not good, you have to fix this one, because this is information comes not from the from the heaven, it's from the real set.
Yeah, you're actually.
Yeah.
It's practical.
Yeah,
it's
it's practical. It's practical. This equipment work or this equipment doesn't work.
Right.
Work good or not good. What's supposed to be changed to make everything better, Yeah.
Like, right now they're going to NAB to present a new device they made. They call it the Dinoscope.
Dinoscope, yeah.
It's amazing that even during the time of war, they're still inventing and making new stuff. So.
That is.
Well, I suppose life doesn't stop, but it's incredibly disturbing.
Is there anything that you want to say for those who either maybe don't understand what's going on?
Well, I was just
there's a bit of a partition around.
Can you? I'm looking for some history. Can you give us history? I don't know. I don't know what's happening and what's.
It's hard to tell with Canadian propaganda, with U.S. propaganda, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard to tell what's going on, what's really going on.
So it all started back in 2014. We had this president, Yanukovych, that we weren't particularly happy with him, but whatever. But he promised to sign a deal with the European Union. It was cool. We weren't entering European Union. It was an association with the European Union.
Okay.
Which would open the trade for us with the European Union.
Okay.
Big money. What it would also do is we would have to lower corruption, because now we have to deal with the European Union, fix the customs, like border customs, work on a lot of the laws and the economy. So it has to be more civilized, let's say. And it was like, well, fine, we don't like the president, but if he signs and there's no other way than for Ukraine with the European, we are gonna get better just because the market opened up and we gotta fix all these things. People were like, okay, fine. And he promised it. Like he said, yes, I'm signing it. He went to Brussels and it was all ready. Like everyone was ready to sign, and he didn't sign it, and he went to Moscow. He went to Moscow and signed a deal with them. And, basically at that point it was students. They came out, and we have a main square in Kiev where sort of people gather when they're unhappy. And, they called it the Euromaidan. Basically, the whole protest was, well, sign the deal. Stay in power, fine, but sign the deal. And he just would not. And after about 2 weeks of these students being there, they camped basically on this main square. They called in the police, and it was a brutal, way of dispersing the protest. And people got hurt. They didn't get killed, but people got really hurt. And this is the biggest difference between Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainians really value their freedom. Because in a lot of ways we're very similar with Russians. We speak similar language. A lot of Ukrainians speak Russian.
Sure.
Our economies are very similar. Our laws are very similar. I mean, we did used to be a Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. There's no going back from that. And but Ukrainians, through the centuries, even if you look back into 16th century, the freedom was a number one value for Ukrainians. So when these cops beat down the students, what happened next day is all of Kiev came out. With, several
protest against the cop.
Yeah, they all came out and said, "Fuck off! Like this is not gonna stand here. We've been sick with it before, and this is just, you can't do this." The fear of Ukrainians at that point, we basically remained the only functional democracy, let's say, out of all post-Soviet Union countries, because in Russia there was only 2 presidents. Belarus had Lukashenko at that point for like 24 years. He's like a forever dictator. Same in Kazakhstan, same in all these other countries. We, by that point, had 5 presidents elected.
Okay, so it's it
was functional. Was it corrupt? Yes, but it was fun. Like, we had different presidents from different.
They're all corrupt.
From different, exactly. They're all corrupt.
They're all corrupt.
From different sides, from the eastern, from the western Ukraine. From
all countries
central
got the
Ukraine.
corruption. There's like, if the people telling, "Oh, it's no corruption in the United States and Canada."
Oh, that'd be
Bullshit.
ridiculous.
And at that point, when all this stuff happened in 2014, the biggest worry from people was, well, we don't want to be like Belarus. We don't want to have this one dictator that's gonna bend down to Moscow and everything's just gonna go downhill. It wasn't, nobody hated Russians or anything like that. At that point, Russia was not even in the picture. Just like, no, we want Ukraine to be with the European Union. This is the way forward. We don't see going any other way, because this is where the market is. This is where the money is. This is, and, as all this happening, and now people are like, no, this president is out. Like, fuck off. Like, we're gonna stay here until, he goes away. And he did run away eventually. It took probably a month or something of protests and fights with the police, and 100 people died. They got shot by the police.
Jesus.
And that's at that point when Putin invades Crimea, right? And grabs it and says, "Oh, we had a referendum there." It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Referendum with guns is not exactly a referendum. On top of that is, you can't have a referendum in one small. It's kind of like you have a referendum in Kitchener and it decides to be its own thing.
Right.
Well, it's either the whole country decides, or that doesn't work any other way. Plus,
Totally.
on top of it is it's one thing when it's if Germany was still part of Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Germans said, you know what, we want to be our own country. That's one thing. But Crimea, the only people really that could say that were the Tatars, which is the native population of Crimea. But Russians holding a referendum that they want to be on their own, like, there's Russia, go to Russia, like, what's the problem? And then after Crimea, they go to, and at the point where they invade Crimea, like, Ukraine's a mess. We were in the process of new government coming in, like, they tried to order the troops to sort of, intervene and do something, but it just didn't work. Nobody knew what the hell's going on. So Crimea just falls off, fine. Then they go to Donbass. This is where Ukraine managed by that point to mount some sort of resistance, right? And the story was the same. Oh, these, people's republics they want to be on their own. And this is not new, so that you understand. In 1939, when Russia invades Finland, Soviet Union, they had a People's Republic, FNR, which were basically the commies from Finland, sponsored by the Soviets, that said, oh yeah, like, we want to have a Finnish, communist republic. And they invaded Finland. And then there was Transnistria in Moldova in 1990. If you don't know, Transnistria is a strip of land between Ukraine and Moldova.
Okay.
And in 1990, Moldova became independent when Soviet Union was falling apart. Same thing. All of a sudden, some people were like, oh yeah, we're on our own. And it's always Democratic National Republic, Democratic.
Yeah.
And the Russian peacekeepers are still there.
Main idea, the Putin's
and
idea.
they keep creating these little, entrance points.
Yeah.
And then once they created that, they said, well, now we have to protect these people because Ukrainians are trying to invade their land. It's like, no, it's our land. We just want to kick them, the bandits out. And the people they place on top of these Lugansk and Donetsk Republic are from Russia. They're not even locals.
Yeah.
So to say that it's local population revolting, it's like, well, but the guy that you have, like, your number one guy, your number two guy, and your number three guy are out of Russia. They're not from Ukraine.
The idea came probably from the elders, like in Putin's head, in Putin's mind, because his idea recreate the Soviet Union, create the huge empire back, like was Soviet Union. This is his main idea.
I think this is his way of staying in power.
Yeah.
Because Belarus already under full Russian control. And he saw that if Ukraine turns to European Union, they're going to be somewhat successful. And that's going to threaten his rule.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And that was his sort of hold on Ukraine. It's like, no, at that point, like, going to NATO is not even a question. So that you understand, in early 2000s, there was a poll of, and it was done in Russia and in Ukraine about, joining NATO. Ukraine had about 20% support of NATO in the population. We didn't want to go there. We didn't feel threatened. In Russia, there was higher support about joining NATO than in Ukraine. So this whole conversation,
Wow.
Russia is scared of NATO, is a bunch of bullshit. If you look at the map, Russia borders Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, now Finland. That's all NATO. US on the other side, and Japan.
Sweden, actually.
And somehow Ukraine over here is the problem. That's never going to be. It had no chance of joining NATO. So this whole, it's the NATO's fault. That's bullshit. NATO had, in 1992, NATO delivered 26,000 tons of food to Russia because people were starving. When Soviet Union fell apart, everything fell apart. Then Yugoslavia, Russia votes with NATO. Right? There was a conflict there. Croatia, Albania, Serbia. Iraq, first Afghanistan, Russia votes with NATO. They provide their territory to transport stuff into Afghanistan. There's interviews of Putin saying, of course we support NATO. We want to work closer with them.
Yeah.
Up until roughly 2011, when there was big protests in Russia and a lot of people got arrested, there was the switch between Medvedev and Putin. Putin was coming back into power. That's where his rhetoric changed. And in 2014, Ukraine, Crimea happened, right? And then he just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it and raised stakes. And in 2022, it's at that point, it's, well, either they called your bluff and you look like an idiot, or you gotta go in, because he kept the borders on the borders of Ukraine. He kept thousands of troops for like several months. They were there, you know, and it was like, well, are they bluffing? Are they gonna go in? Like, it seems crazy to go into the whole country when we really only have a conflict over here. And then they didn't go in. And what people I think don't know is that in 1994, Ukraine signed it's called the Budapest Memorandum. What happened after the fall of Soviet Union? The Soviet Union didn't leave us any food, but they did leave us with the biggest stockpile of nuclear weapons in Europe.
Wow.
Ukraine had a massive stockpile of nuclear weapons. Strategic bombers, we had 2 million standing army, tanks, artillery, we had a fucking shitload. And in 1994, we signed an agreement between Ukraine, states, France, Germany, UK, later China joined, and Russia. And the agreement guaranteed the sovereignty of Ukraine in internationally recognized borders by all these countries if we give up the nukes. So we gave up the nukes in return for this, thank you note.
Holy.
The strategic bombers that today are bombing us, we gave them back to Russia. And then we dismantled the military systematically, according to that. And then when
Ukraine got scammed.
Yes, and when today people say, well, who cares about Ukraine? Well, if say tomorrow there's a change in North Korea and it becomes more democratic, and you want to maybe take the nukes away from them just in case, think about that memorandum that Ukraine signed. How many countries will be willing to give up their nukes now if you don't support Ukraine? You know what I mean?
It's a massive lesson to learn.
Yeah. And that's why when people ask, well, who cares about Ukraine? You should. It is a part of the bigger picture. It is a land size. It's the biggest country in Europe if you don't count Russia.
Right.
Massive population, number 3 exporter of grain, top exporter of like metals and all kinds of stuff. You know.
Biggest for Ukraine.
Hmm?
The biggest for Ukraine.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. For the Ukraine arm. Sorry, I guess
Yeah.
we're talking about a country and
listen.
a fucking.
No, I was going to go there too.
Yeah, I know.
Believe me.
And I think I know there's a lot of disinformation and opinions.
Well, people
and
have
this
a
and
hard
that.
time figuring out what to believe right now.
I think belief is the right word. I think we need to go back and realize that this whole system is based on a belief. The biggest difference between Western world and the rest of the world is one thing: value of life. And you can laugh at that now because of all the crap that's going on. But really, the West realized at some point that value of life is important because a human is creative. They make stuff, they invent stuff, they pay taxes, they make the economy work, they buy stuff. And to maximize the efficiency of that, you gotta give them freedom of market, freedom of enterprise, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and they're just gonna create, and we're gonna make money, and it's gonna be great. And this is the biggest and the only, as far as I'm concerned, the only difference between the Western world where things worked and we ended up with good stuff here, and the rest of the world where they just don't give a shit about population. They just, Russia spent the last 3 months 40,000 troops to take over a city of about 20,000 people before the war. It's a bunch of fucking rubble. And they spent 40,000 troops to take that city. They don't care about life. Stalin never did. None of those countries, Same in Iran. Same in all these countries, The top does not care. Same in China. They don't care about the people. They have 1 billion of them. The biggest difference is that the West does care about people because people they have value. And we have to look at that value, to look what the West is to us. Because out of this value comes all the main freedoms. Freedom of protest, freedom of speech, freedom of market.
But even
freedom
we're
of
struggling with
religion.
all that
Right.
today.
Right. And it comes down to belief. Because the only way the system works if people believe. The money on your phone that are electronic, you gotta believe it.
Yeah.
You gotta believe that it's there, and I have to believe it to take that money from you to sell you something. Same with the laws. You have to believe that. As soon as you erode that system of beliefs, nothing matters. That's how Soviet Union fell apart. Nobody believed anymore. The top didn't believe and the bottom didn't believe, and it just fell apart. US analytics in the 80s said the Soviet Union is going to last for another 30 years, and then it just fell apart. Why? Nobody believed anymore. In the 90s, there was no proper currency. We had coupons.
Yeah.
And the coupons today this is worth 5,000 coupons today. Tomorrow it's worth 10,000 coupons tomorrow. And then it's 15,000 coupons. Because nobody believed in that piece of paper. Things were traded, if anything was serious, like apartment, car, it was traded in US dollars. Like listed in US dollars. And everyone was trading in cash because nobody believed the banks. Because when Soviet Union fell apart, there was only one bank, state-owned. And everybody's money was in that bank. When it fell apart, all the money went away. There was nothing left. So
Everybody lost the money.
People never put money. If you saw someone in the 90s that put in one of those new banks' money, you said, stupid. Once the system of beliefs falls, everything falls. And that's the problem in the West today, is that the system of beliefs is falling. We don't believe the government. We don't believe the World Health Organization.
It's the truth.
We don't want to believe the cops after they arrest kids playing hockey on a frozen lake. Not all cops, but
Right.
we see systems failing.
Well, that's the thing. And as soon as somebody like our quote unquote failing leader starts, he says one thing, we're like, nope. He says another thing, nope. As soon as he says Ukraine, we go, nope.
And that's the problem. And then what do you believe now? What are you left with? What's left to believe? To be like, no, that's the truth. You don't know anymore.
No.
We have to revisit our basic values on which everything was built. Otherwise, it's all gonna fall apart. Because we get too focused on the details. Well, but he said and this. No. Look back at the foundation.
But
what is the foundation?
Yeah.
The freedom is the foundation. Like when we talk about the Freedom Convoy, you don't have to agree with the Freedom Convoy, but their right to protest is a fundamental freedom.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. And that was my issue was the guy that you had on.
Yeah. With Tommy.
He took it in all kinds of directions. And Ukraine is the enemy, and Russia is looking after their own people. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Stick to the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that whether you agree with the Freedom Convoy or you don't, they had the right to be there. If someone was doing something like breaking windows or something, that person should be arrested. I had friends that went to Freedom Convoy and they, cooked barbecue for people.
Yeah, my sister was there. Like
it was
the whole,
it was
almost
very
the whole
civilized.
time. Yeah, it was very civilized. The biggest problem was the honking and for whatever babies and
and the biggest problem was that the leader. You know what? I don't care what you believe as a leader. If you have people that gathered on the Parliament Hill, you should come out and talk to them.
That's 100%.
No, run away.
But see, you a lot like us. I mean, question every friggin' thing that's out there. But this whole mis and disinformation, I don't even like saying those freaking words because it's become like a fad. But that whole thing, I mean, this is kind of where it stems from. See, I kind of agree with you like when Tom came out, he said a lot of things, and whether I agreed or disagreed, I felt like I was more taking in information and learning and whatever. But as soon as he says something, and a friend of mine knows more about the situation, they call him out. There's nothing else that anyone's calling out, but I'm sure that there's somebody else that knows something about a different subject matter that he touched on that would then call him out on that.
And that's the thing, and that's why I say you gotta stick to the initial values, like the core values, the core beliefs, because if we start nitpicking the details, like with the NATO, but
we all end up wrong, just saying the wrong shit.
They brought in this country and they were here and now they're over here.
Yeah.
But look at the values. NATO is a defensive alliance. Who was NATO gonna attack? Look at the main points. Where's all the Russian troops in Ukraine? They're not on the border of NATO.
Yeah.
What does that mean? They're not afraid of NATO invading. They know they're not gonna invade. Where's the Russian money? In Germany, in England, in France, in States. Where's their relatives? Where's their mistresses? Where's their daughters? Where's their, sons? They're all studying in England or America.
Totally.
They all have businesses here. The money is here. Their wives are here. Their relatives are here. Their moms are here. And you think they're gonna attack NATO, or they think NATO's gonna attack Russia? It's bullshit. It's all about keeping Ukraine under control. And whatever the rest is around Russia, so that he can reinforce his regime. And anytime we go into little nitpicking details, like whether it's the Freedom Convoy or the Ukraine or the, all the other difficult situations, like Israel and Palestine, very difficult. For someone who's not there, very difficult.
Totally.
I always say, look at the core values, look at the main trends. I care about Palestinian people, but I don't think Hamas is good for Palestinian people. When they say, "Oh, you're not pro-Palestine," I am pro-Palestine. I just don't think Hamas is good for them. And I'm not saying Israel is completely 100% right. Nobody's ever 100% right. But you gotta look at the core, the foundations.
But I'm the type of person that keeps my head out of this shit. I used to share some things because they were popular and whatever. And I look back and I go, what the fuck am I doing? I literally don't know anything about any of this shit. And I see people sharing stuff constantly, and I constantly have a judgmental reaction.
Media,
I'm like, why? Why? What do you really fucking know? Anyway, yeah. Sorry.
You don't, but in the end of the day, you have to, like I said, stick to your core values. Like if you believe in freedom of speech, it doesn't matter if you disagree with whoever is speaking up.
Yeah.
You should defend their right to speak up, because that's how it's supposed.
Absolutely.
How we supposed to trust the science now.
I do agree.
Or the doctors,
That's for sure.
or the politicians, or the economists.
The world's supposed to
Where's the
understand
debate?
very simple thing. If, for example, in some reason, in some negotiation, whatever, Russia will win, it will be end of the world, because it means what Russia win. Ukraine lose this territory, change the borders and everything. What happens tomorrow? For example, Mexico can fight the United States, take California, take Texas, make some referendum there and go.
Well,
everybody's supposed to understand, very simple.
Let's say Ukraine falls, right? That's right now there's about 20 million remaining people in there. So probably out of them, there's at least 1 million, 2 million that can serve in the army. If Ukraine falls, you bet your ass Russia will make them join.
Absolutely.
Whether they're pro-Russian or not pro-Russian, they'll force them into it, because that's what happened in all the occupied territories. They made the people join. If you're able, you got arms and legs, they'll make you join.
Join the army.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? Russia, if Ukraine falls, they're going to gain at least another 1 million to 2 million soldiers, troops.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And military equipment capabilities, because we have factories and everything else. I'm not saying Ukraine wants to join Russia. Fuck no. But once they get occupied, they will be forced into that position. Transnistria, like we talked about, that's already an in. Moldova is next. 100%. They already have Russian troops there. They've been there since the 90s.
Moldova's small too.
Moldova is
So
very small, and they're not NATO.
But
Right.
Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, that cuts off Russia from the Baltic Sea, which is very important to them. And Latvia is tiny. By the time NATO turns around and gets there, it'll be already occupied. And there's a lot of Russian-speaking people in Latvia and Riga. Riga is
yeah,
predominantly Russian-speaking.
the most population.
And they
in
need the
Riga,
Baltic Sea.
Russian population.
So, and then, so they go in. It'll take them a couple days. Like, Latvia is tiny. So then, NATO's gonna come and be like, well, but, it's NATO. And Russia's gonna be like, but the nukes.
Yeah,
And then there's gonna be like,
Wow.
well, they already occupied them.
it's a big mistake if the people thinking,
Right?
oh, this is just Ukraine, is something
Because
going
they keep
on
saying,
there.
like,
It's
but,
big
no,
mistake.
but Russia has the nukes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but how?
This is big problem
how
for
f-
all world,
How far are you gonna
all countries.
be backing down? And I mean, fuck yeah, it's scary. But at the same time, like we talked about, if all their money, wives and children are in the West, you think they're gonna nuke it? I don't think so.
Well,
And then so let's say Latvia falls. That's already a NATO country. Lithuania is right there, right? Then the NATO is gonna be in big fucking trouble. And then who's not to say that Russia decides, you know what? Because they're right there in the Arctic, and they take a little piece of northern territories because they have oil there. There's nothing there. It's very easy for them to get in there. Canada's military capabilities are so. Are you 200% sure that after US doesn't help Latvia, doesn't help Moldova, doesn't help Ukraine, that they gonna go in and
Help Canada?
help here?
Yeah,
Are we 200% sure after all that? And Russia's gonna be like, we got nukes. They're gonna be like, well, guys, but
north of
nobody lives
Canada.
there anyway. Like, what do you care? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then where do we stop? At some point, the West and fuck yeah, it's scary. But we let them come to this point by forgiving Putin Georgia in 2008, forgiving Putin Crimea, forgiving Putin Syria, Donbass, now Ukraine. What else are we gonna forgive? He's gonna come to your doorstep, to our doorstep. And who is in the allegiance? Russia, China, Iran, right? And everybody says China is the big problem. Well, Russia is right there. If they have it easy in Ukraine, then they can help Russia or China more, right? Or vice versa. So it's not just Ukraine. When we say like, who cares about Ukraine? Don't send money. Number one, it's not just the money that goes there. It's the equipment that goes there. When we say Canada sent $3 billion there, they didn't send cash. They sent equipment. Most of that equipment is used equipment that you have to dismantle anyway to buy new equipment. So we're doing basically Canada a favor by destroying it on the battlefield.
We're selling them the military surplus.
yeah,
Pretty much.
pretty much.
And then Canadian company got the business for the next stuff that replaces it anyway.
Well, this has ruined my day.
And so, sorry. And then, we talk about the scary military-industrial complex. Well, right now, and everybody knows that it's been in New York Times and Washington Post, Russia is producing 7-1 ammunitions. Russia against all of the West, they're producing 7-1. Europe promised Ukraine in 2023 a million 155 millimeter shells. They delivered 300,000. That's it. They couldn't deliver more. They just couldn't produce more.
Right.
North Korea delivered 1 million to Russia. And then we talk about like, the scary military-industrial complex. As far as I'm concerned, I think it doesn't exist. It fell apart. It's maybe somewhere in the Wall Street Stock Exchange somewhere as a number, but they don't seem to make stuff. From what I understand, they still owe like 20 billion in equipment to Taiwan that Taiwan prepaid. They just can't deliver because delays. That's reality of today. So to say that the military industrial complex wants the war with Russia, it's like they're not ready. I don't think they want it. They were making money even before that, and the problem is they can't keep up. One Russia can make more than all of the NATO countries together, 7-1 munitions.